And we're live. So the government's still shut down. We're on the 26th day of the government shutdown. Tomorrow will be day 27. The longest government shutdown so far has been 35 days. So we're not so far off from that mark. A lot of indications are showing that we're going to not only hit 35 days, but probably go past it. So, one indication of when the government shutdown is going to end, when will we finally get a fully funded government, is you can look at the markets. You can look at Polymark. What is Polymarket saying right now? Let me show you really quick and give you an idea of where we're at right now. So, you can tell here by looking at this website, this is what the money is saying. We got over a $500,000 in volume. 7% chance that the shutdown ends by Halloween, October 31st. So you can buy that for 7 pennies. November 15th, 54% chance. November 30th, that's over a month away, 81%. December 31st, 93%. And even going into January. So, according to this, it looks like we're going to probably end up with a historic government shutdown. The second in Trump's administration. The first one happened during his first term, and now it's in his second term. We're going to have a historic government shutdown. That's what it looks like. And it's more concerning at this point, not just because we have federal workers that are not getting paid. Hold on, let me pull that down real quick. Not just because of that, but also you have, issues at the airport. You've probably seen headlines about that. Airports are slowing down dramatically in different cities. But the new big worry that the country's worried about, not just federal workers, but the country's worried about, is when it comes to SNAP benefits, what was called once upon a time food stamps, SNAP benefits. So 40 million or something like 42 million Americans, they actually rely on SNAP to get some food. Now, for an average household that uses SNAP, and once again, this is 42 Americans, it's like 1 out of every 8 Americans. You probably know somebody. Maybe it's your cousin's friend, maybe it's your aunt. I don't know who it is. You probably know somebody who takes advantage of these benefits. 1 out of 8 Americans. And usually it's like, $200, $250. The more dependents that you have, the more kids that you have, the more people that you're responsible for based on your income, it can grow. It could be $500 a household. It could be $600 a household. So those benefits are set to be cut across the country. A lot of states have already announced it to the people that live in that state, letting them know you have to come up with an alternative. These benefits are not going to be there in November if things are headed in the current trajectory. So that means food pantries, that means charities, that means you have to figure something else out, and that could create a huge issue. So that's what the shutdown is showing us right now. But another big news is with the hiring freeze. So we knew that the middle of October, that was supposed to be the end of the hiring freeze. It was going to be lifted, and we were going to see a lot of positions. Now, it created a little bit of confusion because we had the shutdown. So we had the shutdown and the hiring freeze happening at the same time, simultaneously. Still have the shutdown, meaning we have furloughed human resource specialists. But an executive order came out, and essentially the criteria largely has not changed. You will hear some people say, hey, we're not in a hiring freeze anymore. But the jobs on usajobs.gov are pretty much the same. We're still hovering above 4,000 open to the public jobs. And it's still largely in the same categories: public safety, law enforcement, national security, and immigration enforcement. Those are where the jobs are at. What the executive order did, and if you haven't read it and you're interested in federal jobs, you should look at it. It's not that big. I'll go ahead and put it up on the screen. But what it did is it added more bureaucratic layers when it comes to getting hired. So this is it right here. So if you look at this thing, the first paragraph is like, patting themselves on the back saying it's been great. It's been wonderful. And then it says they need to preserve the gains that have already been made. So when it says preserve the gains, that means to keep the reductions in place. So it talks about the 1-to-4 ratio, right? And not only that, but this executive order It talks about doing annual staffing plans, which already happens to a certain extent throughout many federal agencies, but it creates like a board within agencies. It creates a committee or like a commission within an agency when it comes to hiring. And also, when you look at exemptions, this is, the same as the hiring freeze. If you look at if section 3, part 6, right here, it says related to immigration enforcement, national security, or public safety. And of course, SES, political appointee positions are still fine. Military is going to be fine. So we're in that pattern, I would say, not only for the rest of the year, but probably for the next 3 years under this administration. That's what it looks like. Okay. Now, maybe you're still interested. I don't know. Maybe you're still interested in federal employment. If you go on usajobs.gov, what has been confusing a lot of people is why are they showing remote positions? 100% remote. Why is that happening when we know that telework is no longer allowed, largely, with some exceptions? But the administration made it a point, this government's making it a point to tell federal workers, federal employees that, hey, we're not doing the telework thing, but you will still see 100% remote work positions. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. We're going to bring one up real quick. This one that I'm going to show you is actually it's in ICE, I believe. It's in immigration. So let's go on to usajobs.gov. Looks like this for you. Click search. You go down, hiring path. This is where you see 4,800 open jobs. If you're a federal employee, if you have reinstatement rights, you probably have a little bit over 5,000 opportunities. But, like I said, this is in four major job categories, let's call them. And the fifth one being VA. So if we go up here and click only show remote jobs, and we scroll down, you'll see one, Homeland Defender. If you want to defend the homeland, you can defend the homeland in the comfort of your house because this is 100% remote, allegedly. So we click here, you look, you see this right here? This is the 12-month roster position, meaning this job announcement is going nowhere. It will stay here for 12 months. Or more accurately speaking, probably 11 months because it ends September of 2026. So you come in GS5, GS7, making around 50, 55, 60,000 a year. This goes up to GS12 though, because if you look at promotion potential, it says 12. It also says you could be anywhere in the United States. This is a remote work job. Remote job? Yes. That's what it says, right? So you look through here. This is like an adjudicator. You're adjudicating individuals when it comes to immigration. And it talks about the $50,000 sign-in bonus. As you know, if you've been following along, ICE, Citizenship and Immigration Services, they want people. They're trying to ramp up their staffing unlike any other time in history. And if you look through here, it does mention, interestingly enough, that you have to have a motor vehicle. It says this position requires operation of a motor vehicle in certain locations, and you need a driver's license. So you might be wondering, like, why is that? I'm going to be at home. Why do I need a driver's license? Because this job will probably have you driving to a federal building periodically when it comes to conducting interviews. Now, you might be able to do some virtually, but at a certain point, you're going to have to be doing interviews in person, and that's why it's there. Also, in addition to that, you will see there's a training requirement. So this cannot be done at your house. This ISO basic training program, 5 weeks, academic instruction. So you're going to have to go out there on site to a federal location in order to receive this training. But outside of that, I was kind of surprised. This seems to be a largely remote position if you want to be an immigration service officer. So yeah, I mean, if the question is, are there remote positions? The answer would have to be, well, yes, there's a few. Right. And this is open to the public as well. Okay. But yeah, you guys know, the departments and agencies that are hiring. It's the usual ones. It's the usual suspects. Okay. What else? All right, let's jump into the questions here that we had previously submitted to see what we got going on. And the first one says, where is it? All right, captions. There it is. Okay. So the first one, Trish. I don't know if you guys can see that. It looks kind of small, but we're going to go ahead. Trish says, I wanted to look for another job because of all of this. After being with the feds for 17 years, is it worth to stay or leave? And what would happen to my pension if I left or if I did leave? So it completely depends on your situation because even if you're in the agency, you could have somebody that's also working in your same agency, in your same division or sub agency, and they could have wildly different experiences. How toxic is your environment? Is it toxic? Do you get along with your supervisor? Have they been talking about rifts? Are there rift rumors going on in your office? Because all that plays into your decision making. The same thing about what are you going to do? Are you going to jump into the private sector? Are you trying to work for state government? Are you trying to work for city government? What is your plan if you jump out? That's going to have a huge impact whether or not it's a good idea. But what happens to your pension? Your pension stays right there. Any and everybody, after 5 full years working as a federal employee, you are fully vested in FERS, the Federal Employee Retirement System. You're fully vested, meaning that at 62 years old, you can start drawing an annuity. Now, it'll be very small if all you have is 5 years. You have 17 years. Your annuity will probably be a little bit larger. So rest assured that your pension is safe. And then you can always come back. I've talked to people that say, hey, listen, I'm gonna step back for 3 years, see what happens, see who the new president is, and I'm gonna probably jump back in. You could do that, add more years, increase your pension. That is an option. Another option that you have, and everyone has really, when you leave the federal government, you can decide to have a refund of your first contributions. You've been contributing for 17 years. So I'm pretty sure you have over $20,000 that you have contributed, depending on your GS grade and all that other stuff. But I would say you roughly have $20,000 or more that you have contributed. So if you want that money back, you can fill out the documentation and have that money back. But that means you're giving up your pension. So you have to ask yourself which one is which one's more important to you. I would say at 17 years, it's probably more important to preserve your pension. So that's what I would do. But, whether or not it's worth it to leave in your situation, I mean, who knows? We need more context to figure that one out. For some people, I know people right now that are still in their agencies that have no intention, no desire of quitting at all. And largely it's because they agree with their supervisor. They're working with them. They're able to get, telework when they have a medical appointment. They're able to balance it out somewhat. Some supervisors, they have more authority and they have, they're more willing to work with you than other people that don't really even care about you. And they just, want to appease the executive or whatever the case may be. So you have to ask yourself that. Okay. Next question we have is from Chief. I started at the Bureau of Prisons in January. After taking DRP, you start in January. So you're starting in the next few months. Okay, cool. And I'll be buying back military time ASAP. Do you have any info on GL pay scale and Fed law enforcement retirement? Okay, so first off, congratulations on the job for Bureau of Prison. That's a rough agency, but I'm sure you're going in there with your eyes wide open, so you're ready for it. That is also one of the agencies that are continuing to do these hiring events, these hiring fairs. They're trying to recruit and increase their staffing. So GL, right? That's a different pay scale. GL is good in your situation because if you were to compare it with GS, like if you look at GL6 compared to GS6, GL typically pays a little bit more. Something like, I would say, I don't know, 20%, give or take 5%, 20% more. So GL is fine. You want to look at the pay chart? Yeah, you can. Here, I'll show you how to do that real quick. So we'll go ahead and bounce over. Where am I bouncing? All right, let's bounce here. Okay. Well, there it is. Can you guys? Okay, you can see that. All right, so look, go to OPM, go to Policy Data Oversight, and you'll find the salaries and wages. Or you can just pause this video later and you see the site, you see the address bar up there, just do that. Now, when you scroll down here, you'll see GS first and then Law Enforcement Officer. That's where you're going to go for GL. So you click 2025 LEO pay tables. And if you click that, I don't know where you're located right now. So I'm just going to go to base. So we'll look at base and let's see. This should be it right here. Yeah, you see where it says salary table 2025 GL. So you can see GL6, step one is 44,000. GL7, GL8, 50,000 a year, step one. So you should be able to find all the information that you need. Just go to opm.gov and search it just like I'm showing you right here, and you should be fine. But congratulations on the job at a time where a lot of people are very hesitant to join the federal government. Okay, let's take that down. Let's look at the next question. Next question comes from GBTV, who asks, do you think that people who are leaving government jobs would ever return? I'm one of those who are considering leaving my federal government job position sometime in the near future. So, yeah, I mean, sure, some people are going to come back. It really depends on the administration on and how their attitude, how their, I would say their focus is on the federal workforce. Right now, it seems a little hostile, and you have a lot of people that they took the DRP, they resigned, and they are fully vested in the pension, meaning that there is an incentive for them to return to increase their pension amount. So for those people, I could easily see at a different period in time, in a few years, they could decide to come back. Not everyone's going to decide to come back. Everybody's situation is different. But if you did have a desire, you know who's hiring right now. We just talked about those categories: public safety, national security, law enforcement, and immigration enforcement. That's where the opportunities are at now. If you're looking at EPA, well, this isn't the year. This isn't the time for EPA. Unfortunately, you're looking for the Department of Labor? Probably not. You're looking at USDA? Maybe some sub agencies might be hiring, but other ones probably not. So, yeah, overall, the opportunities have shrunk, but people will still consider it, I believe. Okay, let's look at the chat real quick. See what we got going on in the chat. Good morning, Lillian. What else do we have? Hello. Okay, Parlor, good morning. All right. We have Khan. Khan, is there any chance to lift up the hiring freeze? So I went over that a little while earlier, and the thing is, people will tell you the hiring freeze is lifted, and I believe the technical response to the question, is the hiring freeze lifted? Then the answer is yes, it is, but it doesn't matter. So yeah, the hiring freeze is no longer there. It has been replaced by something that looks exactly like the hiring freeze. So to the same categories that were exempted, they're still there. They've created additional bureaucratic barriers to try to get any other job outside of the ones that are exempted. So the same agencies that we've been talking about, a lot of them in the Department of Homeland Security, a lot of them in the Department of Defense, the VA, they're going to continue to hire. They're still going to continue to hire. That's why we have over 4,000 jobs currently on usajobs.gov. But for the other agencies, it's going to be less and less, and some not at all, right? Okay. Oops. I don't know what happened there. Oh, Joey, Joey says, what does Joey say? Just missed my first full paycheck. Working without play is glorious. Yeah, a lot of people are in that same situation. There's something definitely wrong about the government making people work for no money. And in other times, you would say, well, okay, well, at least there'll be back pay. But now, allegedly, that's being threatened as well. So it's hard to imagine the morale going any lower than it is currently. All right. Good morning, Armand King Nor. Do you think the large hiring of the Department of Homeland Security law enforcement jobs may backfire on them if we get a new administration? I'm thinking they will be riffing them as much as they're doing now. It could be. I mean, it's really easy to envision a situation where, the whole thing swings back even more extreme. I really would hope not. I mean, I really would hope we would just get away from the extremes. Wouldn't that be nice, right? Getting away from the radicalness and just try to be a little bit more moderate, more measured. I think everybody would like that. But if hypothetically, if a Democratic president or somebody that leans left gets into office, could they be riffing the law enforcement officers in the Department of Homeland Security? They could, What I would imagine though is they would have more opportunities in different agencies. So people that are working at like ICE or Border Patrol, they would probably have the opportunity to laterally transfer. They would have to apply, obviously, but they could apply for another law enforcement officer job, or they could apply for an administration job. So I I wouldn't use the fact that the next administration could cut these jobs. I wouldn't deter people from applying because of that, because that's always a possibility. But yeah, we could. I mean, what we're seeing right now is the immigration enforcement really surge. So I think the way that a lot of times the way the Democrats look at it is they rather shrink by attrition than to use rifts. Now you could look at President Clinton, and largely what President Clinton did to reduce the federal workforce, he did the early retirement, so there was an incentive, but largely it was attrition. It wasn't large scale rifts, and it's certainly nothing like the rhetoric that we're currently hearing in the news cycle right now. Okay. Um. Oh, hey, that's a good point. I was showing the Homeland. I've never seen. I've never seen the immigration service officers called Homeland Defenders, but maybe that's a marketing technique. They want people to get excited about defending the homeland. Uh, BW says, I was recently furloughed but received pay on Friday. Is this a glitch? Is this a glitch? Yeah, probably. I would reach out to your supervisor and discuss that, because most people I know that are furloughed are not getting paid. Maybe they miscategorized you in the system, because I know that has been going on. That specifically has happened recently at the FDA, where they misclassified somebody. They had people that were exempt from the hiring from the government shutdown. They were supposedly exempt, but they had them categorized as furloughed. So they were not getting pay, or they were not getting the right amount of pay. It seems like in your situation, the whole thing was reversed. So you're actually furloughed, but maybe in their system they have you as exempted. So I would check that out. I would, contact your supervisor and potentially HR, depending on, do you have a relationship with HR? Okay. Next question. We got animal RD. As prior military for 5 years, is it worth to buy that time back, even if unsure on the time staying working for the government? I think it is. So here's the deal. Like, if you buy back your military time, you still need 5 years. You need 5 years as a federal employee to be fully vested in the retirement. So you buy back 5 years in this scenario. You buy back your 5 years in the military. You do 5 years in the federal government, and now you have 10 years. You're credited for 10 years. Now, here's the reason I don't think it's a big risk is, let's say you only do 1 year or whatever the case is, and you leave with no intention to ever come back into the federal workforce. In that situation, you can request a refund, not just of your first contribution. You can request a refund of your buyback of your military time. There's like a section on that document. Look at the sheet. Look at the document that you fill out to request your first contributions back. And there's a section that you check for military. So I don't think there's any risk in doing it. And the earlier you do it, probably, for the best. Okay, Christopher Brown, 10 plus years enlisted in the Coast Guard with a possibility of a medical retirement. Is it worth it to buy back time with the federal job to continue service towards a pension? This kind of touches on what I just said about the last fella, animal. So I think it is worth it. You have 10 years. You still have to do the 5 years in the federal government. Let's say you do 5 years starting now. So 2030, you would have a 15-year pension. You'd be fully vested. So after 5 years fully vested, add the 10 plus 5, 15 years, then you have that pension and you have it locked in. And even if you were to leave the government after 5 years, you can start drawing an annuity at 62 years old. So is that worth it? And you can do the calculation real simple. You could just calculate, I don't know what GS grade or what your salary is, but you just take your high 3, you times that by 1%, and then you just multiply that by your years, and that'll give you an idea. Divide that by 12, and that's before any deductions, because after the deductions, I mean, you have taxes, and then if you elect to do survivor benefits and all that other stuff will eat away at your pension. So you can do the calculation and figure it out. But I believe that if you don't know, that it's still worth doing it, unless you're leaning towards I'm definitely not going to stay in. Okay. What else? Okay, I think I'm a little bit behind. Oh, Will Rich, thank you so much. I appreciate $10. I don't know if you have a question. All I see on my screen is $10, but I appreciate it a lot. Thank you. All right. Um BW's ask, what is the biggest downside of FAA accepted position? They have a much higher pay band, yep, but not sure if it's worth it to switch from the competitive position. So it's just like any other accepted position. The biggest drawback to accepted positions really is it limits you when you're trying to apply for competitive service jobs. But for you, you're already in the competitive service, it seems like. So as long as you have 3 years in the competitive service, you should be good to go. A lot of people, when they first get into the federal government as a worker, they their first job is accepted service. Their first federal job is accepted service, and because of that, they don't have the same mobility. They're not able to apply for their promotion because they're limited to that. They're limited to the accepted service. They can't branch out outside of that. But you already have. I'm going to assume that you have at least 3 years in the competitive service, so it would always be an option for you to apply to another competitive service federal job. So I don't. I mean, it depends. Like, are you staying in the same job series? Because that's another consideration. Do you think you will be assuming a larger workload? You know, the FAA, I know that they need people without a doubt, but what side are you working on? What division are you working on in there? That'll tell you a lot about your potential, I would say, work-life balance and your workload. Um, but they have a higher since they're not GS, they do have a higher pay scale, meaning that you're not limited at like 196 or whatever it is at the GS right now. I think it's like 196, 197. FAA goes over 200,000 right now, and so do other agencies as well. We have travel vets saying that even ICE morale is bad now. Overworked, hostile environment, and quotas. So that first one, overworked, a lot of people can resonate with that. Give me a second, real quick. There, there are a lot of federal workers that had to assume the responsibility of their coworker who decided to accept the DRP, or who decided to, I'm going to go ahead and retire early because this is craziness and I'm out. A lot of people, they did that. In fact, we know that hundreds of thousands of people have done that. And the recruiting is moving slow. We have a lot of furloughed human resource specialists, which you wouldn't think. You wouldn't think you would furlough the human resource specialist, especially at a time where you're overworked. You don't have enough people. So the hiring pipeline is even moving slower. In some cases, it's completely frozen. Okay, next question. Jay, is there another government agency you'd recommend trying for a current IRS GS-14 senior tax analyst? I would not be so focused on agency. We know the main agencies that are hiring. What I would do in your situation, you're a tax analyst, meaning that the foundation of what you do is you're an analyst. So your job series is 0343, without a doubt. Maybe maybe you could go to 0301. You could do a lot in the 0300 section. You might even be able to do 0560 budget analyst being the key word there. I would search in your zip code within a 30, 45-mile radius, put the job series that you know you're eligible for, see what pops up, what interests you, and then after you've done that, once you have that list, then start looking at agencies and be like, oh, okay, Department of Defense is looking for somebody. Do I want to work at the Department of Defense? Or, Department of Homeland Security's got a couple of openings. So I would take that approach first, but there's probably a lot of jobs you could potentially do in the federal government throughout multiple agencies. You don't necessarily have to stay at the IRS. Okay, cool. Let's check out some of the previously submitted questions. What else we got? Oh, hey, real quick reminder, sign up to the free newsletter down below if you haven't done it. I don't think I even pinned the comment, but in the description of the video, you can find the link Free newsletter every Thursday. Shoot it out. Comes with hiring events, and it covers some of the main, federal news highlights. All right, cool. Next one is Congon, who asked, I want to know about how federal disability retirement and workers' comp works, as I've been researching, but I'm a bit confused. So, federal disability retirement, or FDR, that's for people that can't perform their job duties due to a medical condition and is expected to last over 1 year. That's the main thing. Workers' comp means you were injured in the line of duty. You were supposed to do something. I don't know. You're working on your desk, and then a tornado hits, and then a desk hits you upside the head. You get a concussion. You're working on the job. Something happened to you, and that's why you're injured. I also like to look at it like this. So workers' comp is more temporary, and doing an FDR is more long-term, more permanent, I would say. So the way that would work if you were eligible for FDR is that you would get a monthly annuity based on your salary and the years of service. So you would have to, you have to apply through your HR office, and it's usually about 60% or so of your high three average salary after 20 years. If you have under 20 years, then it's going to be prorated. They'll do the math and they'll figure out exactly the calculation on how much to give you. But it all starts with the HR. So you talk to your supervisor, talk to HR, and see if you're eligible for that. Next question is from August 3rd. I know Congress is trying to pass new paycheck bills. To pass a new bill, we need the Democrats to agree, correct? Also, to not pay federal back pay, wouldn't a new bill have to be passed? Not paying would create a public outcry. So yeah, the House and the Senate would agree. You need the Democrats and the Senate definitely to agree. Here's the deal with back pay. If nothing is done and the government's fully funded and resumes, the back pay is automatic. Congress would have to pass a new law to block the back pay. So that's what it would have to happen. We've heard many people in the administration say, well, we don't know back pay. Maybe for some people, maybe, other people don't deserve it. We'll have to look at it. We'll get back to you. But the bottom line is, when the government's fully funded and resumes operations, back pay is automatic, thanks to a law that President Trump signed in 2019. So it is automatic. And you're right, a new law would have to be created through Congress. And I don't see it happening. If it were to happen, I would agree with you. Public outcry would probably take place. Yeah, so we'll have to see. Next question, Shannon Reed, who asks, have you noticed that many of the jobs being posted seem to be for the federal workers that already have RIF letters? I'm noticing many of the jobs that are open seem to be more and more for them only and internal candidates. So yeah, I've noticed that several times. And usually agencies, they prioritize internal candidates. So people who received RIF notices. So the job might be advertised government-wide or even open to the public, but the first selection pool could be internal. And I think this is done to retain experienced staff. There are times where you lose good people. The supervisor doesn't even want to lose them. Maybe the executive doesn't want to lose them, but there's a certain number to cut and they have to get cut. Maybe that office is closing down. The office is gone, but there's an individual in there that's a high quality worker and you want to give them the opportunity to come join a team in a different office. So they put that job announcement out there. They let the individual know, hey, this opportunity just came up, apply. And they have preference because they were just cut, right? That comes with CTAP, ICTAP. You have a preference if you were recently let go from the government, and they want those people to apply. So yeah, that does happen, and it's probably happening more. Okay, let's see what else. What else we got? We have we got Curious J. I'm new to the federal government. I'm a 1515, so you're a computer science person. I do not wish to be promoted as I'm in the later years of my career. Any advice? The first question is promotion even a possibility for you? If you look at your job announcement, see if there's any promotion potential. Let's say 1515, I don't know where you're at or what agency you're in. You're probably in the Department of Defense or one of the sub-agencies of DoD. was it like a GS13? You're in a GS13, GS12, maybe GS14 position. If there's no promotional ladder, usually nobody's forcing you to get promoted. No one's going to push you. Now, if you're in a promotional ladder, then I don't believe your duties would change normally in that job. Let's say you're a 15-15 working at DoD and you're in a ladder position from GS13 to 14. So you're at 13 now, and you're telling me you don't want to be a 14. But being a 14 would simply mean getting paid more without any additional duties or responsibilities. So I don't track with the logic of you not wanting to be a 14. If it meant that, okay, now you're a leader, now you're a supervisor, now you have additional responsibilities, now I'm tracking. Like, okay, you don't want that. You're in the later stage of your life, the later stage of your career, and you just want to focus on you. You're responsible for yourself, nobody else. So if the agency is trying to push you into a leadership role, I would say that you can communicate with your first line supervisor and let them know what your goals are. Like, hey, I put a priority on working for these tasks and this mission. I want to develop this skill set. My current ambitions do not include a leadership role. I mean, it depends on the type of relationship that you have with your supervisor, but something as a conversation like that could work. But usually, to be placed in a supervisor or leadership role, you would have to apply. Even if it were like a detail position, you would have to actually apply to a new position. If you don't want to be a leader, if you don't want to be a supervisor, simply do not apply to the position. Like, thank you for making me aware that they are positions, but that's not what I'm focused, with right now. And then there's something like there's a IDP, like an individual development plan, where you sit down and you share what your goals are, what your benchmarks are in your career. Not everybody should have to, be forced to work in a management supervisor position. It's different in the military, because in the military, if you don't take those leadership roles, they'll just get rid of you. So you're kind of like pushed into that type of responsibility. But in the federal workforce, largely, I don't believe most agencies work that way. So if you don't want to get promoted, if you don't want to apply for your promotion, you shouldn't be forced to. You shouldn't have to, unless you're feeling guilty. Oh, Shimp's here. What's up, Shimp? Shimp, you pretty much make it to every one of these live streams. I appreciate you, Shimp. Okay. All right, let's look at some of the previously submitted questions. What else we got? We have Jocelyn Brown, who asked, have you heard anything about the DRP2 folks' annual payout during this shutdown? Also, any updates on Vera retirements being processed? Is there anyone at OPM working on them? So I think you're talking about annual leave payout. And a lot of people are waiting on their annual leave payout, especially the people that took DRP 1, 2, and some 3, depending on the agency. There are some federal employees who have already received their annual leave payout. But generally speaking, I believe that most agencies are waiting for the government to reopen. They're waiting for their agency to be funded again before they do the annual leave payout. So it's going to be a mixed bag depending on what agency you're in. And there are also people at OPM that are working on Vera, their early retirement. It's just that OPM is not fully staffed right now. They're operating, I think, at like, I don't know, probably somewhere around 50%. They don't have everybody there. They furloughed some people at OPM, which I don't understand it, but they did. So the processing time is probably going to go a little bit slower. Once the government resumes, which is not expected to be for a while, if you recall that, I don't know, most of you guys weren't on here earlier, so I'm going to show you again. For the question of when is the government shutdown going to end? For that question, we have a nice little chart here. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up. Not there, but here. This is Polymarket. So this is showing us what the money is saying, not just people that are spewing rhetoric and giving 22-hour speeches and talking on CNN or Fox News. This is where the money is going. The money is saying, you think there's going to be a shutdown that's going to be lifted by Halloween? You're wrong, because there's only a 7% chance. November 15th, 54% chance. November 30th, 81% chance. And then 92% chance is December 31st. And then even January 31st. So there's $500,000 in here. People just betting. People love to bet on what is happening. So if you were following the money, I would say the earliest it looks like mid-November to late November, I say. And that's crazy, man. It's crazy to think about because November 1st is another pay period for the service members. It is nuts. And I think I read a report recently that said the airports were like at 50, they're like at 54%. They're operating at a 54%. Like what are we talking about? Like half as they're operating 50% slower is another way to look at it. So imagine how that compounds if it were to continue. If the shutdown continues to Thanksgiving weekend, even that's crazy talk. But that's what the numbers are saying. That's what people are betting on. And if you feel differently, well, there's a market where you can bet if you feel like you're right. Um, okay, what were we doing? What was I even talking about? Okay, next question. DKT who asked, this shutdown appears to be a marathon run. If the shutdown bleeds into the open season for insurance selection, do you have any information if they're going to extend open season or change in any way how the open season for insurance will be conducted? Yeah, so open season is usually November to December. You change your insurance plan if you want to. So, historically speaking, OPM has extended the open season window when it comes to a government shutdown. So, you will not lose your ability to enroll just because of government shutdown. So, you need to keep checking opm.gov and look for the announcements. As of today, I looked there a little bit, probably like an hour or two ago. I didn't see any announcements, but there should be an announcement potentially on an extension. Probably coming up this next week, I would imagine. So keep looking at opm.gov. All right. What else do we have? Let's go back to the chat. Curious Jay says he left his contractor job of 15 years to work in this hostile environment. Yeah, right before any of this happened, I think in November, I helped a friend of mine. He's working at the Pentagon right now, but he was a contractor for the longest. And one of his main reasons for trying to be a federal employee was stability and security, especially because usually when people are concerned about a recession, everyone in the DC area says, well, working for the federal government is a recession-proof job. That's how it was often thought about. And then as soon as this guy gets the job at the Pentagon, I think it was like 2 months later, all of a sudden there's some chaos happening in his workplace. So a lot of people didn't expect it to go talking about the cuts, talking about everything as it pertains to the federal workforce. A lot of people didn't think it would be as drastic as it happened throughout this year. It caught a lot of people by surprise. Extreme Workouts say government employees should be paid based on their performance, not their degree on or who they know. Yeah, I think everybody here can agree with you. Absolutely, they should be paid based on their performance. And the federal government, even before the Trump administration, they've been placing more of an emphasis when it comes to your skills and experience. There's less of an emphasis. I don't know why that was hard for me to say. There's less of a emphasis when it comes to your actual college degree, unless it's for one of those jobs that require it. If you're going to be a lawyer, then yeah, degrees. Physician, nurse, then yeah. But for most jobs out there, you do not need any type of credentials, certifications, or college degrees. And who that's always a sore subject for a lot of people, because I believe that most people that I speak with, when they say they couldn't get a government job because they didn't know the right people, what that really means is they did not know the best way to structure their resume and to narrow their job search in order to apply with a high degree of certainty that they would get referred. And during the interview, they were not prepared as well, because interviews in the government are different from the private sector. The hiring process in the government is different than the private sector. So not knowing that, if you were to know somebody in the federal government, they could share that with you. Some of them could, most of them, I would say, they could share with, like, hey, listen, this is what you got to do. You can't apply with that resume. You can't go in the interview and expect all these pleasantries, because they're not going to banter with you back and forth. It's going to be a cold experience. And if you don't know anybody that can clue you into that, then you're at a disadvantage. But when it comes to hiring people simply because you know them, that happens everywhere. And it shouldn't really. Now, if you're in a small business, if you know someone, if somebody knows somebody, then that you might look at that it reduces your risk of having a bad hire, meaning somebody who's just completely incompetent, but they did great during the interview. In the private sector, people are hiring family members. People are hiring people that they know. In the public sector, yeah, there are some people that I know. I've had firsthand knowledge of somebody hiring somebody that they know, and I thought it was absolutely wrong, especially when you're talking about family members. I think that's completely wrong. If you're using your influence or your position as a hiring manager to hire your brother-in-law, sister-in-law, cousin, I think that's absolutely wrong. So, because I think that it's wrong, and because there's federal rules that prohibit it, it doesn't mean it isn't happening. Of course, it's happening, but you can petition Congress to make even stronger rules, and people are still going to find ways to get around it. In my experience, that has been the minority of cases. I would still say well over 50% are actually hired based on merit. Now, I don't know how it would compare with the private sector, but I do know people that absolutely know nobody, and they go in there and they blow the room. They go in the interview and they completely destroy it in a good way. Like they know their stuff. They come in there with success stories like, hey, I did this, I did that, I got metrics, I'm quantifying this, I'm quantifying that. I know the history of your agency, I know your mission statement, I know your vision statement. It aligns with me this way. I'm ready to hit the ground running. Put me in, coach type mentality. And yeah, that goes a long way. And people get hired like that. But it becomes incredibly easy for people to say, well, I just didn't know anybody. The system's against me. And I'm going to go just, be incredibly cynical for the next few years or for the rest of my life. And I don't think that's the answer. You're not helping anybody by doing that. You just got to keep taking shots, even in the private sector. They're not hiring you. You got to keep taking shots, make adjustments. You got to keep taking shots. My God. What else are you going to do? I don't know. Okay, hello. What else? What do we got here? I'm retired with 20 years military. 7 years civil service. Is early retirement possible with 3 years for a total of 10 civil service? Hey, the deal is, CB Grizz, the deal is you just need 5 years, man. You just need 5 years and you're fully vested. So you're retired right now, military, 20 years, you're getting your pension, you're covered by TRICARE, things are going well, hopefully. I hope things are going well. You got 5 years civil service, meaning when you turn 62, you can start getting your annuity. And that's it. You don't have to get 10 years. What do you want 10 years for? You can get 10 years if you want, and then you have a bigger pension. You get a higher annuity. You get more money every month. Is that what you want to do? You still got to wait till you're 62, probably, in your situation. So, yeah, you're retiring at 62. You're fully vested. Okay, what we got here? Anonymous. Hiring freeze isn't allowing any personnel actions, internal or external, that's been ongoing, and compounds issues with these current rifts and alleged C-type opportunities government claims to offer. Yeah, you're right. I wouldn't say the hiring freeze. I would say the government shutdown is causing that. It's furloughed human resource specialists that are not allowed to work. That's what's compounding issues, I would say. Okay, Dana Cooper. Good morning. I am NAF, DOD employee, and my probationary period ends December 2025. I want to transfer to another role but higher salary. Stay with NAF or chance GS. Any suggestions? What's your job series? I know we've talked before, but I can't remember what your job series is. I would say, if it's me, I'm going where the monetary incentive is greater. So all things being equal, I'm looking for an opportunity to get paid more for what I contribute to the organization. So is GS going to pay you more? And are you in the competitive service right now? If you're in the competitive service, for me, I feel a little biased, but I feel like I would lean towards GS without knowing more information. Okay. What else? TSA. TSA officers don't make much money. That's true. They don't. Many are paycheck to paycheck. Absolutely right. Holiday air travel is going to be crazy this year. It has already gotten crazy. Yeah, the longer this goes on, the worse, and hopefully the more attention it gets, because I don't feel like it gets the appropriate level of attention that it should get. But yeah, hey, it's not just TSA officers. My goodness, it's over half the country that really lives paycheck to paycheck, that's really struggling with bills. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, the SNAP benefits. There's some people out there, they can't get anything higher than retail. Retail is the limit. You get fast food, you do, Bed Bath Beyond, you do dollar store, jobs like that. It's almost impossible to be able to save and invest and to claw your way out of those type of situations. And the answer is, well, get out of that location and find better opportunities, but it costs money. And if you already have a kid, that makes it even more complicated. But even if you don't have a kid, you need first, last month rent. You need a good credit history. You need to go somewhere that you know nobody. You don't have a support system. You have to get out of that area. It's way more difficult than it sounds like. And for a lot of people, it's not a possibility. And that's why people still need to eat, right? I mean, people need to eat. You got over 40 million people coming really soon. And the question was asked directly, like, hey, are we going to do something about this? And the answer was no, we're not going to do anything about it. Yeah, Curious Jay, this furlough, yeah. So the amount of stress that has been put on, I would say, most people in the federal workforce, it has negative health consequences. There was a mention not too long ago about a federal worker that had what you call, it was a seizure, and it was due to being overworked and stress. It was connected directly to stress, and the nervous system wasn't able to wasn't able to um to stay with it, right? So like the brain's short circuited, and then all of a sudden you lose control of your body, and they had to be hospitalized, and things like that happen a lot. There's a huge component to everyday life that depends on your ability to be able to provide, to pay your bills, to put food on the table. And then once you have like your car being repossessed, you get the delinquent notes, you get your second warning, you get your final warning, your utilities get cut out. All that stuff like slowly chips away at the essence of your humanity, of who you are as a person. It just goes away slowly and slowly and slowly. And it really, it goes further than embarrassing somebody. They lose their dignity completely. And then I think most people say, well, if you made poor choices, you made poor decisions, well, that's your fault and you should suffer with that. And that'll teach you. But when it's not your fault, I don't think people can acknowledge that. Like, if it's not your fault, and I'm a big believer when it comes to accepting personal responsibility, but the government shutdown, it really isn't any one federal worker's responsibility or fault. Nobody was pressing the button like, yeah, let's make the government shut down. This is wonderful. Nobody did that. It's not their fault. It's a political failure. And it still seems to be advantageous to keep the shutdown continuing despite all the negative consequences that we're seeing. But yeah, it wears a person down, and to the point of breakdown a lot of the times. It can be really rough. Hey, appreciate the $5. Jesus. All right. Curious Jay, I've been watching your videos for months now. This is the best channel. Oh, yeah, I appreciate that, Curious Jay. Thank you so much. Love your channel. I love your comment. Okay. Oh, TB, thank you. Dana Cooper with $10. Thank you, Dana. Good morning, Armand. Without your assistance, I would have not my current federal job despite the chaos. The probation period ends in December. Thank you. You're welcome. I remember that you got in like right before all the chaos. I think you got in last fall, if my memory is correct. You got in last fall, or maybe it was last summer. But hey, I was glad to help you. Okay. Walter K. Have you heard or seen anything on the 2-page resume and how effective HR has been and looking at the screening process? HR is somewhat deliberate, they're not operating at full speed. So I wouldn't use what's happening right now to be a judge on how HR interprets and processes the 2-page resume. I have a live stream on the 2-page resume in August. If you go to my YouTube channel and you look at my live stream, so 2 live streams ago in August, I do live streams once a month. 2 live streams ago, I explain the 2-page resume and I show you an example. I use my resume so you can look at, clearly at what I'm focused on how to make it actually 2 pages, because it's really easy to go over, especially if you have a long career and there's a lot of achievements that are relevant. You want to save those relevant achievements, but then at a certain point, you have to cut something. And there's certain ways that you can maximize the space on the resume. So I would encourage you to look at that. Maybe I'll leave a link to it if you can't find it, but it should be pretty easy. Just go to my channel, hit live all in August. It was the August live stream. Let's see. Curious J, $10. Thank you so much. Video game controller evolves into a muscle version of itself under the word LVL plus. Thank you for sharing that. Next question or next comment question. An anonymous department told our agency to not process actions that change admin codes per hiring freeze memo, which is causing coding errors, thus wrong competitive areas and several RIF notices. That sounds horrible. For most people, the executive order was perceived to override the previous hiring freeze, to make it in such a way that we're no longer under a hiring freeze, even though all of the same criteria from the hiring freeze pretty much changes over, plus some, meaning it has become more restrictive to hire. Veteran ally civilian side chick. I've binge watched since January. Great information. Thank you. I appreciate you. King Nor with the $10. Hey, I appreciate the super chats, guys. Really nice. Thank you for what you do. I enjoy your videos. Thank you for watching. Thank you. All right. And let's go with one more. We got one more here. Question. It is Jay, wondering if agencies can still process conversions, certifications under the new probationary rules if employees reach the 1-year date is during the shutdown and employees are furloughed. Yeah, we talked about it during the government shutdown. We got non-essential HR staff that are often furloughed. That could slow down the processing of these actions. Now, if an employee's 1-year probationary period is during a shutdown, well, there's a possibility that the probationary period can continue to run. If you're not getting feedback from your agency, then your probationary period could potentially run over that 12-month mark if your probationary period is 12 months. So you need to make sure that you're communicating with your supervisor to ensure that's not happening with you. But no one's going to take adverse actions just because, well, they shouldn't. I'm not going to say nobody, because my God, there'll be an exception to that, I'm sure. But they shouldn't be taking any adverse actions just because of the shutdown. All right, let's see. Okay, let me go ahead and mention it once again. Hey, if you haven't signed up to the newsletter, make sure you take an opportunity to go down below in the description. You can sign up for the free newsletter. Also, there are resume templates, federal resume templates, 2-page federal resume templates, different job series down below. If you click resume examples, there's also a book. You could do ebook, you could do physical hard copy book. There's a resume example in there as well. There's also success stories on how people were able to attain a federal job coming from the military, coming from the private sector. And there's a lot of useful information in there. And you can always schedule a call down below. You can look for that. And then if I didn't hit a question throughout this, I probably skipped a few of them. You can always drop it as a comment after this live stream is over, and I'll try to go back and answer those questions. But it looks like we do have a couple of more. We have one stationary engineer in New York City. Good morning. Are there any time restrictions for DRP folks. Did time on DRP admin leave count as time and grade for future promotions? So for that last one, I would say yes. It will be on your SF50. So that time should still have counted. It still counts also for FERS. So when you're doing your retirement calculations and you were on DRP for, I don't know, 5 or 6 months, that's going to count when you do your first calculation. It's not like the time didn't count. The time definitely counted. So did your TSP contributions during your time on admin leave. You should have been still contributing to the TSP. So all of that counts. DRP has worked differently. The vast majority of DRPs were done, I believe, between February, March, April, and that ended at the very end of September. But there was other DRPs that end December 31st. And there's another one, I believe it's at NASA, and maybe I'm forgetting a couple of other agencies, but it actually goes into January. And there's been some indication that agencies will probably continue to use them as necessary throughout 2026. But there's new guidance. It cannot be as long. So the first DRP that we saw people take towards the end of February, I believe, that one was really long because you're talking about what? March, April, May, June, July, August. You're talking about 7 months. The new wording, I believe, says it cannot last longer than, I want to say 4 months, could be 3 months, but I want to say 4 months. So they've reduced the timeline, meaning you can't just hang out on admin leave for that long, but they're still going to probably offer DRP to their workers in the future. Okay. Next question. I'm a retired reservist and I was told that I can claim it. I can claim my annual training for my federal retirement. My question is, do I have to submit all pages of my AT orders or just the first page? I would clarify with them. If I were you, if you don't have any contact with them, I would include all of it because, better safe than to be sorry. But yeah, first course of action is reach out and ask that question to the HR specialist. Second course of action, if you're not able to contact HR, upload all of it. That's what I would tell you. You got any other questions in here? Hey, thanks everybody for spending part of your Sunday with me. I really appreciate it. And if we don't have any other questions, that's going to wrap it up. Once a month, we're doing the live streams, right? So it's the last Sunday of every month. But what I'm probably going to do, I don't know if it's next month. What's next month? November? Either November or December. I'm probably going to do an additional live stream, but it's only for people that are really trying to attain a federal job. So it's going to be more of a resume review type live stream where I can review resumes. But most people are not interested in that, honestly. It'll probably be like a members only thing. So the people that are very interested in it, then I will review their resumes, and everybody else, it won't go out to them. So it's one of those situations where you can like submit your resume. I'll give you feedback. You can adjust it, and it'll be like a live stream like that. And then, of course, maybe if there's like a significant event, I'll do a live stream. But other than that, we'll just keep it at once a month. Really, once again, hey, I appreciate everyone being here. Thank you so much, and hope you have a good week. All right. I'll see you next